You're listening to the Kelly Green Hour for the Always Next Year Podcast Studio Network. You can find the team on our Twitter, @ANYPodcast, or visit us on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. And now, to bring us in, the Jackdaws.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such eager my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Always Next Year podcast. This is the Kelly Green Hour, as we are a week and a half away from the NFL regular season getting underway for the Philadelphia Eagles, and about a week away from the 100th season in the NFL as the Chicago Bears and Green Bay Packers kick off the 2019 season. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and joining me today, as always, is Connor Donald. Connor, how you doing, my friend?
Not too bad. As I told you yesterday, going through buying a new home, and it sucks.
I bet.
It is a pain in the ass. So
what you're saying is never buy a house. Just stick with renting?
Well, I mean, no, because, at the end of the day, you make money off the house when you sell it. You don't make money renting. So
yeah.
I guess try and make it as painless as possible.
I don't even know if that's possible when it comes to not even just buying a house. Whenever you're buying anything, I feel like there's pain. You're buying a car, even if you're going to the grocery store, there's pain.
If
mainly
you just buy brand new, because we're looking at this house that was done in the 70s, and a lot of things are new, but it's cheaper because they know you're going to find things because it's older. So just buy brand new. Just build your own. If you can afford to, just straight up build your own.
Oh man, if that was possible, we might have to go out. If I got to find a way to go out and legally get money to build a house.
You can probably do it the same way you buy a home. You get your mortgage. You just got to make sure you have enough money, saved up to put the down payment.
That is very true. All right. So before we get started with this segment, over the last, couple of weeks, Connor and I have been, going over changes that we can make to the show. Once the regular season starts, obviously that's next week, but it'll be after game one. We are going to go to 2 shows a week. The first show will be a review of the previous week's game. So in 2 weeks, we will do a review of the Eagles-Redskins game. And then later in the week, we will do a preview of the upcoming game. So that week 2, the Eagles are in Atlanta on Sunday Night Football. So we will do a review show and a preview show. This is something that Connor and I have been discussing over the last couple of weeks. There's so much that we could talk about when it comes to Eagles football. And instead of trying to cram it all into a 45-minute show or doing one hour and a half, 2-hour show, we're going to split that up so that we can make sure we digest everything that happens throughout the football season for the Eagles. We are also going to do the customary pick segment. Now, last year, when we had the entire team doing it, we picked every game. It was a segment that I won, by the way. But we're going to do it differently here on the Kelly Green Hour. Obviously, for the entire season, just like fantasy football, we're on the pick'em. We have a pick'em segment, or we have a pick'em thing on the ESPN app that we're all doing. So we'll be able to keep track there. But for me and you, Connor, we are going to do 3 picks. Obviously, we're going to pick the Eagles game. That's going to be worth. We'll give that a point total. Then you're going to do your lock of the week. That'll be worth 1 point. And your upset of the week, that'll be worth 2 points. Now, you could do 2 upsets. You just can't do 2 locks if you want to. It's similar to the way Fox NFL Sunday does it. Then, they do a lock and they do a pick. And that's the way that we are going to do our pick segment this year between you and myself. And we will keep track of it throughout the year. And, we'll figure out who wins at the end. Hopefully, people enjoy it. And if you want to get involved with that, obviously you can go to the Always Next Year podcast Twitter at ANY Podcast, or tweet, Connor or myself. I'm at LJ Harrell 54. Connor's at Connor 10. That's Connor TEN. And we will definitely get your picks across. Hopefully everybody likes that segment. But I think, Connor, that's going to be an exciting way for us to, go head to head. We won't always have the same opinion. Usually we think we're like-minded when it comes to football. But hopefully this is a way for me and you to be on different sides, and we can get good debate going when it comes to the upcoming week's games.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. I just look forward to football being back. It is time. I can't wait for next Thursday. I don't even care that it isn't the Eagles. I just can't wait.
Shoot, I'm happy about this. We have a full slate of college football games. Now, I love the NFL more than I love college football. I'm a huge Alabama fan. But, I love college football. When it comes to basketball, the college basketball blows away the NBA easily. So, that, I believe Rob and myself are going to actually have an NCAA college basketball show once that season gets underway. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But, the full slate of games this week in college football, Clemson and Georgia Tech, the defending champs, Alabama and Duke. There are some good games, and I'm just like you mentioned it. When it comes to football, you can never have enough football, and that's actually something that we're going to discuss later on as we get towards the end of this segment. Is the NFL in terms of 18-game schedule? I know we sort of discussed it before, but they kind of put a little tweak into it which we'll discuss later on. But let's go back to last week's game, the Eagles and the Ravens. Lamar Jackson didn't play for the Ravens, which when I saw that, I immediately messaged you, and I was disappointed because I'm a huge Lamar Jackson fan. I would have loved to see the way the Eagles defense looked against him. But Trace McSorley, who I'm not a fan of because I can't stand Penn State, he shredded the Eagles defense. Yes, Brandon Graham went on WIP earlier this week and said, we don't really game plan. It's go out there, read your keys, just do your job. They didn't game plan. They didn't really come up with exotic blitzes, which could have confused the rookie quarterback. But was that a cause of concern for you, watching the Eagles defense kind of get shredded against Trace McSorley in that Ravens offense?
No, really. I mean, I guess if injuries come about, because some of the starters played a little bit at the start, but then it was back to your basic usual people. If injuries come about to all the starters on the defense, I would be concerned, as would probably any team. But no, it doesn't really concern me. A lot of these guys are fighting for a roster spot, so it's only making them look bad that they're giving up what they gave up, and they fell behind by that much, and Josh McCown was forced to come out and try and make a comeback possible, which, if it wasn't for the weather, maybe he would have done it. But, it doesn't really worry me all that much. You didn't have the core of your team out there, and the people who are going to be out there week in and week out playing for you. So, if a lot of injuries begin to happen along the line and other positions, key positions like linebacker, where we're already thin, then I would be concerned.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was good to see. I'm going to go to the offensive side of the ball. It was good to see some of the starters out there, see the starting offensive line minus Brandon Brooks. And they actually played longer than I thought. They played the entire first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And, seeing, and I don't think, Jason Peters played all that bad or whatever. I think he mainly wanted to get out there just to knock rust off, go up against another defensive end instead of going up against Brandon Graham or Derek Barnett or Josh Sweat, every day. So it was good to see them get out there, and again, no injuries. Josh McCown actually, after the first half, he really looked good in that, especially in that second half. He had that beautiful touchdown pass to JJ Arcega-Whiteside, who has been really, really impressive. And you can see that he is going to be a big part of this offense, especially in the red zone. And obviously, we hope we don't have to see Josh McCown play, but if he has to go in, he's not going to be Nick Foles, but he's going to be a suitable enough backup that the Eagles, if he's needed to play a game or two, he's going to be able to go out there and give them a chance to win football games.
Absolutely. I loved watching the starters out there. It was good to see Rodney McLeod out there, even if just for a limited time. We haven't seen much of him in the last year. Corey Clement, it's nice to see him back, and to know that we have that change of pace guy like Corey Clement behind Howard and Sanders. Clement will probably not have to do as much work or lifting as he's done as the undrafted rookie that we got. But it's nice to know that you have him there. And if you have to take Sanders out or Howard out or whatever, or it's a blowout game, you have that guy who can keep the pace of the game going like he does. And you said it best, but J-Jaw looked amazing. He looked really good, and I mean, I know a lot of people started hitting up Twitter saying, "Oh, let's trade Alshon Jeffrey and get rid of Jeffrey now." I don't think it's time to jump to that conclusion by any means. I think we can wait it out, give it a year, and then next year when you're looking at Alshon Jeffrey's $12 million contract, saying, "Where can I save dollars?" Maybe go looking that way. But I think, yeah, Arcega-Whiteside will have a massive role in that red zone. He's made some good catches. You've seen videos of him making the plays outside of preseason, just in practices and joint practices. You've seen him making those big plays and his catch radius, and it's amazing. And it was originally, I didn't know what to think of the guy. You dig a bit deeper into him, it's like, oh, he's a good red zone threat. And now you see him with the speed on the field and making the play after the catch, and you're like, okay, this is a good pick. This is a good pick. When people are starting to say, let's move on from Jeffrey, let's save money, we don't need the money this year, but maybe next year, maybe further down the road, it is something to look at. But for the time being, you keep Jeffrey, you keep Whiteside, you keep Jackson, you keep Aguilar. I mean, Goddard, Ertz, man, it's crazy. All the names that you can name, the depth that we're going to have out there running around, and the height. Who cares about the depth, the height? Trying to keep up and get those mismatches for defenses is going to be a nightmare.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how teams are going to defend this team in the red zone, especially with the healthy Carson Wentz, and he loves to spread the ball around. You mentioned it. Arcega-Whiteside is like 6'4", 6'5". Jeffrey 6'4", 6'5". Ertz 6'6". Goddard 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". Deshaun Jackson, now he's not the biggest red zone threat, but he's got that speed where if you're going to stick him one-on-one, he can outrun you. He'll run a drag across the back of the end zone, and he'll find a way to get open if the offensive line gives Carson Wentz enough time. So it's definitely going to be fun. And you mentioned how people were talking about the possibility of trading Alshon Jeffrey. Give me a break. It's not happening this year. He loves this. It's very rare, that you see a player take to a city, and we see it with Bryce Harper to an extent. But when Alshon got here three years ago, it was coming into 2017. It was after, Carson had no weapons, or receiving threats whatsoever on the outside, and they get Alshon, and Alshon, he loves this city. I follow him on Instagram. I follow, and you see a bunch of videos of him just exploring the city. He's in Love Park. He's all over the place. It would be a shame if the Eagles were to get rid of him this year. Now, things happen. Next year, they could be up against the cap if they were to make a move this year for a certain defensive player. And, they might have to cut bait next year. But there's no way you get rid of Alshon Jeffrey this year.
Yeah, see, so now I got to ask a question, because you're the whole Jadeveon Clowney, and it's happening, and you want it. You're the biggest preacher of it. It's no surprise that they want a receiver. They've said they want a receiver or a back or work on the offensive line. If they say we want Alshon Jeffrey because we want to pair him with DeAndre Hopkins, would you be willing to make that move if it meant you got Jadeveon Clowney?
Wow. See, I don't even know if the Texans would want Alshon, because they have DeAndre Hopkins and they have Will Fuller. More than anything, I think they need a slot receiver, and that would be Nelson Aguilar. Because Fuller and they have Kiki QT. So in reality, I don't think they need a receiver. I think they more need an offensive lineman, and they need a running back because of what happened to Lamar Miller last week. It would be tough for me to include Alshon, but when you're talking about getting a 26-year-old defensive end in the prime of his career who can wreak havoc and who pretty much puts you as the favorite in the NFC, because you look at that defensive line, Brandon Graham, Malik Jackson, Fletcher Cox, and Jadeveon Clowney, like, it's hard to say no. But I don't think, in all reality, now I could be thinking wrong, because who's the coach? Why can't Bill O'Brien is the de facto GM because they fired their GM. So who knows what the heck the Texans are going to do. But I think they can get away without giving Alshon, and they can give up a Mailata or a Vaitai with, maybe even a Jordan Howard. we don't really need Jordan Howard. Miles Sanders is the number one running back for this team. So if you have to give up a Mailata or a Vaitai, a Jordan Howard, and say a third-round pick, I'm all for it. I do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I guess I only bring it up because they did say they're looking for a receiver to pair with Hopkins based probably on the injury history of Kiki, Cutie, and Will Fuller. But also, I think they got just that offensive line. I think it goes without saying, if you don't get something for that offensive line in return for Clowney, you have lost that trade. I don't care what you get. You've lost that trade.
I have a question for you. So Howie Roseman is the genius. We know this. He jumped ahead of Houston for Andre Dillard because Andre Dillard was going to be a Houston Texan. And then when the Eagles jumped ahead and took him, they took the Alabama State kid. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but
Howard.
Yeah, he is not ready for the NFL. If Houston came to you saying, we'll give you Jadeveon Clowney and a first-round pick for Andre Dillard, would you do that?
No. I think that's crazy. I saw that on did you see that on Twitter?
It was somewhere.
Yeah, it was on Twitter, and I could not believe it. That guy you go into the comments section, that guy did get ripped up and down.
I totally agree. I wouldn't do it either. But don't you think that would give Howie would give you, or the Houston is giving you a first round pick with Jadeveon Clowney, and Houston, with Andrew Luck retiring, they may be, obviously it's anybody's division to win in the AFC South, but that pick could be a top 15 to go along with your first round pick. But yeah, you wouldn't do. I wouldn't do it either.
Well, it's just
Andre Dillard, you're starting left tackle next year.
You see what you got with Dillard. You're seeing it in the preseason. He's allowed no pressures whatsoever. That could be your future. You don't get that type of offensive lineman and hit it right twice in back-to-back years or in the next 5 years. I find it so hard to believe that you're going to hit the nail on the head and get that type of offensive line talent in back-to-back years or in a decade-long span. So, you got to think that would be crazy that you're going to give up your first rounder who you invested in, who you hopped over to get. I admit it's enticing, but not only because enticing.
Only because of that first round pick. But you're right. The Eagles have the opportunity. They've gone from, who was the left tackle before Peters? Wasn't it? Trey Thomas was a left tackle. John Runyon was the right tackle, I think. But, you go to the longevity at left tackle that the Eagles have had. Jason Peters for the last 10 years. Who would have thought he would have lasted here 10 years after that trade with Buffalo? And then you could go right into Andre Dillard, who could be your left tackle for the next 10 years. And then you have, Lane Johnson on the other side, who still is in the prime of his career too. It's crazy how good, Andy Reid was back in the day with solidifying the offensive line, and how good Howie Roseman is building from the inside out when it comes to the offensive and defensive lines.
Absolutely. It's amazing. They've committed to the trenches, and that's where they stay. That's where they will live and die. The Eagles, for as long as Howie's around, they will live and die in those trenches, and with the offensive and defensive line. So, would he hit it on the head again and get an Andre Dillard light player? I wouldn't be surprised, because Howie loves scouting out offensive and defensive line talent. I just wouldn't risk it.
Now that begs the question: was that Joe Douglas or was that Howie Roseman? Because we
got Dillard. So until we need to address another position along the offensive line, I'm gonna say who cares who it was.
Okay, I agree. We got
Dillard to back up Peters. So.
All right. So I mentioned it a couple of minutes ago. I want to talk about this Andrew Luck thing. He retired. He's mentally drained. He's physically drained. The cycle that he talked about, going out there, getting hurt, having the rehab, then practice, coming back, getting hurt. The Colts did this guy no justice the first couple years of his career. He got killed because they didn't put an offensive line around him, and he missed a lot of time because of the injuries that were accumulating on his body. What were your thoughts when it happened? I was in complete shock. I couldn't believe it. What were your initial thoughts? And you think, that the Colts fans were right for the way that they treated him when the news came out?
They were not in the right to treat someone who's put what he's put into that city. To boo him, it was just so disrespectful. I completely disagreed with that at the time that it happened. And, if Carson Wentz had to go because of something like that, I would find it hard to believe. And Eagles fans, I would find it hard to believe that Eagles fans would boo.
And I would tell you this, though. If there were even like a smatter of boos, the national media would be all over it. We didn't really hear – I mean, we heard a little bit of it because it was a prominent thing about what happened. But, like, the national media didn't kill Indianapolis fans like they would have killed Philly fans.
Oh, no. We'd never hear the end of it. It would be worse than Santa Claus. But, I mean, it shocked me. I thought it was fake. It came through and it was on the Sleeper app, the big thing in fantasy football. And I was like, there's no way this is true. And then you open up Twitter and it blew up. It was just Andrew Luck, comments about Andrew Luck, stuff about Andrew Luck through the whole timeline. I didn't even people who were like hockey fans, baseball fans, it was all Andrew Luck. The shock was there, but I mean, I get it. I kind of get it. I mean, that mentally, I've heard people talk about it mentally. It can take a toll on you. Mentally, the game will take a toll on you even if you're healthy and doing well. It just takes a toll, always traveling, always dealing with injuries, moving your family around. The mental toll is really, it's something that I could never imagine.
Yeah,
and I mean, we can say that we can imagine it because we locally play on like a rec league basketball team or whatever, but you really don't. You don't know.
Yeah, you don't know it to the certain extent that professionals do. And a lot of guys, Jason Kelsey came out in support, Lane Johnson. Rob Gronkowski talked about after the Super Bowl, he couldn't walk for a couple of days. Like his body was just so shot, and that's why he had to retire. Now, I would not be surprised if Rob Gronkowski comes back, halfway through this year, if Andrew Luck comes back in a year or two after he gets away, he physically and mentally heals himself. It would not surprise me if you see him back, because so when he came out, I was more of an RG3 fan than I was an Andrew Luck fan. And now what I'm going to say is it makes, I don't know, but like, who would have thought that RG3 would have quote unquote outlasted Andrew Luck in the NFL? Now RG3 is the backup quarterback with Baltimore and barely like hanging on in the NFL. But, also RG3 showed support to Andrew Luck. They came up, when they were both getting drafted, all the stuff when it came to the first couple of picks, it was, who's it going to be? RG3, Andrew Luck, RG3. So they got to know each other well. But, just the way that the Colts fans reacted to that, obviously I think they were more booing the situation than they were booing Andrew Luck. But still, you kind of have to read out the situation and not give an immediate reaction.
Yeah, there's a time to boo and there's a time to cheer. And in that instance, it was even better off just silence. And then you get
when Sean Rodriguez calls Philly fans entitled, that's a time to boo because he has no right to talk. But when what happens with Andrew Luck, that's a time, as you mentioned, be silent, kind of respect them. And obviously they had a good enough team that they could have won the AFC South and made a run in the AFC playoffs. Obviously things change now. Jacoby Brissett's a good quarterback, but he's not Andrew Luck good.
No, exactly. I mean, and it's this, and like we were just talking about the Houston Texans, and some people were talking about on the radio when I was listening the other day, like they're doing the same thing to Deshaun Watson. He's been hit the most. Like I'm pretty sure Luck and Watson are 1 and 2 for most times being knocked down in the last 5 years. And they're doing an injustice to the talent that they have. And that's what happened with the Colts. The Colts have a line now, but look how long it took. Look at what it cost them. It cost them their franchise quarterback. At what point do the Texans say, all right, Jadeveon Clowney's got to go, and it's got to be offensive line talent that we get back. We got to support the offensive line. Like, at what point do you realize that you are wasting a amazing talent, because Deshaun Watson is an absolutely amazing talent, just as much as Andrew Luck was. And was he Andrew Luck? No, I think Andrew Luck was better, but I mean, you were wasting time and talent some good talent as far as on the offensive side goes. You got Hopkins, you had Miller, you have Duke Johnson, you have the talent there to equally make a run if you address that offensive line.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And let's think about the different players throughout the years that have retired earlier than we thought. I mentioned Rob Gronkowski. How many people, I mean, we didn't really think, he's still, 29? He's still in the prime years of his career. He could have played a couple years longer. Thinking back, Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, there are a bunch of guys that retired a lot sooner because they weren't winning with their current team, and the team that they were playing for just wasn't giving them the resources or doing enough to build a championship team. Or B, they wanted to be able to walk out on their own. They wanted to be able to play with their children when the children got older. They wanted to be able to not have the wheelchair everywhere because their body just broke down. And you just got to give these guys credit for knowing when to say, I'm done, and walk away and not allow the people in the cheap seats, the people that just like to talk, to influence their decision.
I agree. I mean, it's the fact that you're able to walk away and say that I think I'm doing the right thing, and I know that I can be with my family, I can stop traveling, I've made the money I need to make. That you have to respect that decision just as when someone retires from their job. It's a similar situation. I think if someone's ready to go at 50 or someone's ready to go at 55 from their job, I mean, you have to think that it's a mental game, considering when to retire, when the time is right, when to hang it up. What's the point where I physically push my body as far as I can go? And a guy like Gronkowski, like you talked about, if he came back, I'd be shocked. And I don't think the man will be able to walk 10 years down the road if he doesn't come back. Either way, I think the man will have trouble walking. That guy took a lot of big shots. Like, the big guys are the ones who take the biggest shots. Like, you look at Gronk when he was out on the field, there's people going at his knees, there's people going at his hip, there's people going at every part of his body, 2-3 people trying to tear him down all at the same time. Like, and size is a factor too. A guy like Gronk, his body isn't built like that, just like Yao Ming. You think about Yao Ming, he retired at the age of 30. He was 7'6". Greg Oden, yeah, like Yao Ming's ankles kept breaking. He's at the point like he probably won't be able to walk someday. Like, these are the types of people, like, you have to consider that too, the size of the player and what their body can take and how their body grew as the years went on. And I mean, as much as it's disappointing to see athletes like this go, you want to be able to see them go and live a happy life too. Like, if Carson Wentz had to go at the age of 30 because he continued to be injury prone, I would full on respect his decision and respect that he made the decision on his own and without being influenced by anyone but his family.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. It's a tough thing. We don't know what's going through the head of professional athletes. That's what it comes down to. And you have to live with their decisions. It's tough, especially, you think about it. We live in a social media world. We live in a fantasy world. You have people that had their fantasy football drafts before Saturday. And I had a friend who, in his league, somebody took Andrew Luck and Lamar Miller in back-to-back picks. And after Saturday, he was out of those two players. Lamar Miller broke his ankle or tore his ACL and is done for the year, and Andrew Luck retired. Like, and it's a shame that that's what it comes down to. Like, you don't think about the realism in it. You don't think about the person themselves. It's more of how they can help you in terms of winning a fantasy matchup or helping your team in the immediacy. You don't think of the long term for them.
No, and it all too often happens that way, that we just think about this situation like, oh, my team, or oh, my fantasy team, and we don't think about the mental drain that it is on these people to constant, especially for a guy like Andrew Luck, who it's constant rehab, play, rehab, re-injure. Like, we can't say that we have any idea what that's like or what it would ever feel like. You can sit there and say, I play beer league softball and I get an injury every year. Yeah, but it's so different. we can't mentally even think about because they have to travel, all the doctors, all the specialists, the social media outpouring, the pressure from management, the pressure from owners, the pressure from players around him, maybe even their family. You just don't know what they're going through at the time. And we've seen it before where the pressure to come back has led to Kevin Durant. The pressure to come back from just people are like, it's just a calf injury. Well, the calf can affect the entire leg, and look what it did. It led to a torn Achilles. Look at Boogie Cousins. Similar situation. He keeps thinking he's ready. He keeps thinking he can come back. Boom, torn ACL after trying to rehab a leg issue the entire playoffs. You just don't realize the mental and the physical wear and tear that you go through as an athlete. And none of us could ever imagine it unless we were a professional athlete.
Yeah, and if we were skilled enough to be professional athletes, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now.
Absolutely not.
All right, so I'm glad we were able to talk about that. And I do hope that we never get into a position to where, say, Carson Wentz were in 3 years were to just retire way earlier than we anticipated. I don't want to know what the fallout would be. I hope we don't. I would respect, like you said, we would respect Carson Wentz, but the majority of the Philadelphia fan base honestly have no idea. So I really hope that we don't find out, because that will put a real dark cloud. That could put a real dark cloud over Philadelphia. I mean, we're already looked down upon by everybody as it is. That would just make it even worse.
Oh, big time.
All right. So let's take a break before we get into the Eagles-Jets game day preview. Everybody saw the video going out last week during the Eagles-Ravens joint practices. Carli Lloyd booted a 55-yard field goal. She actually did an interview with Jim Jackson during Philly's pregame earlier this week, and she said it was the first try. She nailed it, which doesn't really surprise me. She seems just like an uber athlete. Apparently, she was offered, the opportunity to play in the preseason games on Thursday, but the U.S. women's national team is on their victory tour games, and they're playing at the link, so she wasn't able to. But she said that she would think about it for future, so possibly next offseason, she could go into a training camp. A, do you think she could be a kicker? And B, what players from other sports could play in the NFL right now, and at what position?
Do I think she could play? I'm not going to say, so non-offensively, anyone who can kick could be a kicker. And that's the type of situation there. She has a leg. You could bring a rugby player over, and if they're not like Jordan Mailata where they're learning a whole new position, if they're coming over and they're just kicking and they can boot, anyone could be a kicker. Anyone could probably be a punter as long as they got the leg and the leg strength to do it. So could she do it? Absolutely. Would I love to see it? Absolutely. I think that would be a humongous thing for the NFL to have a first female athlete do that. No matter what position they play at. If they're just a kicker, who cares if it's just a kicker? Just think about the situation from the NFL standpoint. It's just an amazing thing to think about.
I do think that eventually there will be a female player in the NFL, and you obviously can't put them in a skill position. I mean, if you could, then go all for it.
I wouldn't say obviously. I wouldn't say obviously.
I mean, it's highly unlikely, but there is still that small chance that you can get a female running back out there who's got moves, who can cut on a dime like Shady and whatnot. But I think the kicking position would be the easiest, at least for the first time. You mentioned it. That's her livelihood. She kicks. She plays soccer. And she's been in those high tense situations. You're playing they've won two consecutive World Cups. Like, that's not low level. That's not low pressure. You have to go out there. You have to pinpoint passes. You have to if you're penalty kicks, you have to kick them. And, with the entire world watching, it's not like that she's just out there playing a friendly. So she's been through that pressure before, that if she has to go out there and line up for a 38-yard field goal, she has the ability and the mental makeup to make it.
Exactly. I mean, would she have to probably work on the accuracy? Judging by that first kick, No, but obviously that's something you have
Footwork
to
she would
work
have
on.
to.
But I mean, we've seen worse. Cody Parkey. Like we've seen
Ready? Here we go.
people who lack the accuracy.
I'm gonna give you a take right now. If Carli Lloyd was in the NFL right now, she would be better than at least 10 kickers in the NFL right now.
I
think
would be fully on board with that. I bet she'd be better than half the league's kickers. I mean, you look at it. There's like, you look in fantasy, it's like that top 10. And after that, it's like, who the hell cares? If you didn't get one of the top 10, just throw a dart at it. Throw
top
a dart.
10, it's more like top. If you don't get Justin Tucker, Steven Gostkowski,
Robbie Gould,
Will Lutz, Harrison Bucker,
Jaime Fairburn or Fair.
Yeah,
or
I don't even know if I would put Jake Elliott in that because he can't make field goals under 50. He's good at he's clutch over 50, but when it's 40, 45 and lower, I don't trust him to make those. So like after you get through the first 5, 6, 7, 8 kickers, it's downhill from there. And I think Carli Lloyd could be better than some of those.
I'd say I'd go well above that. I'd say she could be in the top half of kickers in the league if she came over. Probably most of that U.S. women's national team could.
It wouldn't surprise me. What athletes from other sports do you think, obviously there's the easy one. LeBron James could be a tight end in the NFL right now. He's just an athletic freak. What other players from other sports do you think could play in the NFL right now if they were to take off their skates or if they were to put the basketball down or put the bat down and strap on some pads and a helmet that could play in the NFL right now?
Oof. I quite often think like back in the day, I know it's not right now, but what if Iverson was a receiver? You read so much about AI and what he was like as a receiver. And like you see there was an interview once where it was like it was his high school coach and he said this guy was not a good football player. He's a great football player.
He was a quarterback too.
And yeah, he was a quarterback and a receiver. So I mean, you got to wonder like what he could have brought to the game. Now thinking about it now, like we talk about LeBron James. Off the top of my head, I could never think of a hockey player strapping on football uniform. Maybe you could think of some, but I mean, it's such a different concept of a game, skating versus running and that stuff.
Like Usain Bolt, just returning kicks. I mean, obviously he may be scared of getting hit, but he's so fast.
Even as a running back, like who cares about just returning kicks? If he was just a running back, you never know. If you could get the moves down, you never know what Usain Bolt could do. And then he could be amazing.
Yeah, and then how about Braun Strowman? We watch wrestling.
I thought about wrestlers. I did think about wrestlers.
Well,
I was like, should I bring that up?
Brock Lesnar used to play. He played with the Minnesota. He was at least on the practice squad or was in camp with the Minnesota Vikings.
Dwayne
The Rock
Johnson.
went through the U. Baron Corbin
played in the
CFL
too for a short time.
Pretty sure Baron Corbin was in a training camp. John Cena could probably play but Braun Strowman, we see what he does when he is so freaking big, but his cardiovascular, I feel like he doesn't get tired, it seems like. And when he does his going around the ring and shoulder blocking people, I just feel like I would love to put pads on him.
Put him on the defensive line.
Yeah, I want to see somebody block him.
Offensive line, we're learning with Jordan Mailata that it's not easy. Like Jordan Mailata is 6'8". Braun Strowman is 7 feet.
I think defensive line is easier because all you have to do is go after the quarterback.
You just push. Offensive line is more of a strategy that making sure that they don't get by, and not committing the penalty too.
Yep, I agree with you there. So it would definitely be real interesting if it will be an interesting time when we see a female in the NFL, and I look forward to that day. All right, so the Eagles and the Jets play this week in the fourth and final, thank God, preseason game of the 2019 preseason. The Eagles, you're not going to see Wentz. You're not going to see Josh McCown. I have a list of players that you most likely will not see tonight. It's a pretty expansive list. Wentz, Sudfeld, McCown, LJ Fort, Zach Brown, Avonte Maddox, Ronald Darby, Rasul Douglas, Sidney Jones, Orlando Scandrick, Corey Clement, Jordan Howard, Andrew Sendejo, Sidney Jones, Malcolm Jenkins, Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders. That's the first half.
So basically anybody who's going to be a starter on this team next year.
I got some. Ready? JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Zach Ertz, Ronald Darby, Deshaun Jackson, Darren Sproles, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Isaac Sayamalu, Jason Peters, Tim Jernigan, Halapulu Vaitai, Derek Barnett, Vinny Curry, Andre Dillard, Brandon Graham, Ronnie McLeod, Malik Jackson, Nate Gary, and Jonathan Cyprien. I think it's safe to say those players probably have made the team. which means Nate Jerry made the team, which I'm not too excited about. But
I knew he would based on the Camus Grugier Hill injury, but if it wasn't for that injury,
and with Nigel Bradham, who hasn't practiced yet or played yet, so but yeah, this is going to be a game where you see nothing but backups and guys that are just fighting for a roster spot.
Half of which
are you going to watch
even. I'll probably watch a bit of it, but I mean, there's only so much you can watch. Like even last week, that was hard to watch some of that defense. Like, that a lot of these guys like won't even make, like the Eagles have went out and they've made like 4 different roster moves this week, just getting guys so that they don't have to play. Like some of even probably the third string guys, they'll stop after the first half and they want these guys to go out. They'll put the Clayton Thorsons of the world out. They'll put the, holy Lord, whoever, like I'm looking at a depth chart now, like some Kasim Edebali. You know who that is? It's a defensive end.
Yeah, they
exactly.
picked him up like a month ago or something.
Exactly. So that's when you're going to see a lot of these guys going out. So, I mean, I'll watch a bit of it because you know what? It's football. Football is football at the end of the day. But, I mean, like you said, we do got college football to get excited for this weekend. So thank God we're not sitting here watching this game and saying, well, now we got to wait another week for football. There's some good football there.
Yeah, there is. So I know I went over that list rather quickly, but if from any of the names you can remember, which ones are you surprised that aren't playing tonight? Like, I'm surprised Orlando Scandrick isn't playing. Does that mean he's on the roster? Because obviously we know that they're top heavy. Avonte Maddox, Sidney Jones, Rasul Douglas, and Ronald Darby, and probably Jalen Mills. He's going to start PUP, so he will be out the first 6 weeks. So we know that they're on the opening, the 53-man roster. But does that mean Orlando Scandrick has made the team? Jonathan Cyprien has made the team?
Cyprien doesn't actually surprise me. Cyprien was
it doesn't surprise
something
me
I was expecting, especially after Camus Grugier Hill went down and stuff. That was the expectation, I think, was just to add a bit more depth and versatility at the same time. Scandrick did come as a bit of a surprise to me when you just said him there. I was kind of like, oh, that's a weird one. Is he on the team? There's a chance. With the issue we had with the injury issues we had at cornerback last year, wouldn't be surprised if we kept that extra cornerback with some experience because we were riding guys with zero experience last year. Like you think of a Cravon LeBlanc who emerged, but what experience did he have before that?
Yeah.
Like kind of to have that experienced guy in the back, probably we'll see like 5% of snaps this year, maybe.
And I don't want to see Jeremiah McKinnon or Josh Hawkins on the field for the Eagles this year because they have been. It's been terrible watching them this preseason.
We thought that they gave a lot last year, like Mills when he gave up his 5 yards at the start, man. McKinnon is brutal, man.
No,
that guy worse. Like 15 yards.
Hawkins is worse. It's so bad watching them out there together. I can't take it. It's so frustrating.
But, I mean, could they be something someday? You never know. Look at what, like, some of them have become. Jalen Mills is tolerable. Is he good? No, but he
was also a 7th-round pick. Like, he was drafted. These guys coming off the scrap heap, they're where they belong.
Exactly. But, I mean, otherwise, do any of the other ones shock me? No, not really.
Yeah.
I wish they'd play Nate Gary because then he might get injured and then we don't have to watch him anymore. But
oh, that's savage. I'm so with you on that. I can't stand him. So the Jets, we're not going to see, Le'Veon Bell, Robbie Anderson, Sam Darnold, Jamison Crowder. We're not going to see any of the starters for the Jets. So this is going to be literally 3rd and 4th stringers versus 3rd and 4th stringers. Let's get out of here as quickly as possible.
Like the AAF.
Yeah, pretty much is what it's going to be. When we get into the regular season, this is when we're going to jump in more into the opposing teams. We're going to give you a scouting report on the Washington Redskins. And so, week 1.
Oh, are they worth scouting? Didn't even know.
Well, we have to. We can't. We could talk Eagles all day, obviously, but we have to scout the other teams, see what they're bringing. I mean, that defense for the Redskins is actually good.
Yeah, that's fair.
They did spend a lot more money on Landry Collins. I think that's his name, right?
Landon.
I'm sorry, Landon Collins. Than they should have. But yeah, as long as anybody. Oh, here's a question for you. Deshaun Jackson broke his ring finger. He's expected not to miss time, but the injury itself takes about 3 to 4 weeks to fully heal. Are we worried about that at all? Because, I mean, that's an injury. You can tape your ring finger to your middle finger or to your pinky and kind of you should still be able to catch the ball, I would think. But for a receiver of Deshaun Jackson's, I mean, we know he can run fast, so it doesn't affect the speed. But you think the injury to his finger will affect his hands and his catchability?
If it was a younger guy, a rookie who hadn't been around as long, or like second year or whatever, maybe I'd be a bit more concerned. Because it's Deshaun Jackson, I'm sure he'll figure it out. I know he was trying out some finger splints and stuff, and so I know that I have confidence in him being able to catch a ball even if he's got fingers taped together. If it were J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I'd be like, okay, no, maybe sit him, give him his time to heal, don't put him out there and risk the situation you're putting him in, kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Deshaun will be fine. He'll be out there, and he'll be going up against a former team. So we know what he did to us when he went up against us. So it'll be hopefully he gets to burn. Who would be covering him? Josh Norman, maybe. I think.
I feel like Norman would be on Alshon Jeffrey, but maybe you never know.
They did. I can't remember who the other corner is that they brought in. I think they did bring somebody, whatever.
Now, see, this is it. This is what the other teams are thinking. They're like, who do we put on who? Like, how are we going to do this?
Like, who? If we have a legit number one corner and they usually cover the top receiver, like, technically our top receiver is Zach Ertz. You don't put a corner on Zach Ertz. It just wouldn't work. So you're right. It's going to be fun. And we will discuss this, next week when we talk about the Redskins. All right. So I have a couple questions that I had fans or people send to me. First one. Realistically, what would you give up in a trade for Jadeveon Clowney? I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but when we put this on Twitter a week or two ago, people were like, nothing more than a 4th round pick, this, that. No, like that's not realistic. What is a realistic trade if you were Howie Roseman that you would offer up for Jadeveon Clowney to the Houston Texans?
Well, first of all, if I was the Texans, I'd probably go with whatever Miami's going to offer, because Miami's going to give the better offer. It just sucks because he won't sign his franchise tag.
I'm glad you brought that up. Why would Miami do that if they're trying to tank? They want to tank. They can tell people they don't want to tank, but they want Tua Tagovailoa next year. They want that number 1 overall pick. Why would you go out and get a defensive end who, A, you won't be able to resign because he won't resign with you, and B, you're going to have to give up some capital to get him? That makes zero sense to me.
Well, they talk Kenyon Drake and Stills as potential people, but they wanted Laramie Tunsil, which makes sense. They got to get something on the offensive line. So my realistic trade offer from our side would have to include, I would probably say Vaitai. I don't think they want another project. Titus Howard's already a project. Do you want to take on Mailata and continue the project? No, you need someone who's going to protect now, and Vaitai would probably be that piece that goes now. And I'd say you'd probably be, if you tried to throw in another player, you could throw in a Jordan Howard. I don't know if I'd throw in a pick with it. That's a lot, but you'd want Jordan Howard's commitment that he would resign essentially, since he's a free agent next year. But I'd say Vaitai and a higher pick, maybe 2nd, 3rd rounder, or Vaitai and a combination of maybe an Aguilar, but it's tough to say, but if it's 2 players, it's 2 players. I wouldn't put the pick. If it's a player and a pick, it would be a higher end pick, probably 2nd round, 3rd round pick, and Vaitai or Aguilar or Howard, whatever combination you want, but it has to make sense. It's got to be an offensive lineman. Like I said, it's a lost deal if they don't get an offensive lineman.
I agree, and I would offer up Vaitai if I know Brandon Brooks is playing week 1. He pretty much says that he's playing week 1. So if we're 100% confident, and because if Brooks doesn't play week 1, Vaitai is your starting right guard. So I'd have to make sure that Brandon Brooks is 100% playing. Then I would offer up Vaitai, and I would do a conditional 3rd, because the condition would be if Clowney re-signs with us, it moves up to a 2nd. If he doesn't, it stays a 3rd. I would want that as kind of a safety net for the Eagles. You want that. Granted, the way that Howie has structured contracts and everything this year, like they're going to get a good number of comp picks next year. If they make this trade and Clowney doesn't come back, doesn't resign, you get a comp pick for him. You get a comp pick for Jordan Howard. There's a couple other players that are on 1-year deals that they leave, you're gonna and they get picked up, you're gonna get a comp pick. Like, he has mastered this system of the comp pick evaluation for the Eagles, so that they're not going to be low on picks. So if you have to give up a second rounder, you can give up a second rounder, but I would do a conditional third, with the condition being if Clowney signs, it moves up to a number 2.
That would make sense.
And then our final question is, there's talk of the NFL, obviously the 18-game schedule, but there's also talk of expanded playoffs. And what the NFL would do is add one more team, and the number 1 seed in each conference would get the bye week. So 2 would play 7, 3 would play 6, 4 would play 5 in the wild card round. Do you like it? And if you don't, would you make a change? What type of change? Stuff like that.
I'm all for the 18-game season and just getting rid of 2 preseason games, if not getting rid of the preseason altogether. I mean, I understand what people are saying by it gives people on the roster bubble a chance, or it gives rookies a chance, or undrafteds a chance. I get it. But at the end of the day, there's other ways to evaluate that. I like, some people have talked about more joint practices instead of the preseason, which I'd be good for that. That's a good way to evaluate the talent you got. Have joint practices with 2 or 3 teams instead of just one, and get a feel for your players that way. But I'm all for, I didn't hear that idea about the expanded playoffs. I'm all for more competitive football, and we know how competitive the playoffs get. So I'm all for that idea, but I don't think you get an 18-game schedule out of it if you're expanding the playoffs and having more games on that side. So I think you'd probably be looking at like eliminating the preseason and sticking with 16 games and having that additional round or additional team in the playoffs. But I'm all for the 18-game season and just straight up eliminating the preseason altogether and leaving the playoffs the way they are. But I'd be open to seeing how they kind of made that all work out, and kind of see if what would happen with the added team in the playoffs, what they do to the preseason, what they do to the regular season. So, but I'm all for more competitive football games. So you give me more playoff games, I'd be a happy guy.
Yeah, I would take 52 weeks of football, but that's just me. I love football. Obviously, that's never, ever, ever going to happen. But I definitely would take an 18-game schedule. And you mentioned joint practices is what the NFL, what NFL teams are moving towards. So if there is going to be an 18-game schedule, they're going to get rid of 2 preseason games, which makes sense. We hate the preseason. We love it like for the first drive, for the first play. It's like, yes, football's back. And then we're like, oh, wait, it's preseason football. Let's get rid of it. But yeah, so they need to shrink the preseason. If you want to go to 2 preseason games and do more joint practices, televise the joint practices. Have the joint practices at the link. When teams come to Philly, you could televise them. Fans would probably have a lot better time watching you go up against another team in a practice scenario where you can run plays, you can set the situation that you want to be in, and your quarterback doesn't get hit and get hurt. We can see more of Carson Wentz out there. And then in terms of the expansion of the playoffs, see, I love the way the playoffs are now, but I don't want it to dilute the playoffs. MLB did that with the second wild card. That second wild card is keeping the Phillies in it. And yeah, as a Philly fan, okay, cool, that's cool, but it's a joke. Keep it at the 4 teams in the MLB. You're 3 division winners and the 1 wild card. You don't need the 2 wild cards, and you play in that 1 game. It diluted that playoff, and the NBA having like all 7-game series dilutes that, because the NBA playoffs take like 3 months and it's way too long. And I don't even watch the NBA playoffs until the finals because the first 3 rounds are just boring to me. It just takes way too long. But yeah, I think the NFL is perfect in terms of the amount of teams the way it is now. If they want to add another one, I won't complain, because that means you get 3, you get 6. Technically, you would get 6 games, right, in the wild card round. I won't complain about more competitive football, like you said. So if you want to add another playoff team and give me 6 wild card games, I'm all for it.
Yep, I couldn't agree more on that stance. But yeah, like you said, preseason's gotta go. You can find better ways to evaluate your players without putting your key players at risk. Joint practices, more joint practices with more teams. Over a 1-month span, you do a joint practice with 4 different teams, or whatever you want to do. Just like you said, the preseason hype, you watch that first drive and then the old-fashioned week 3 rehearsal, it wasn't even like that this year. It's getting further and further away from it. So there isn't even a week to look exciting for or a game to look forward to as far as preseason goes.
Yeah, and Brandon Graham said it, I think it was last week when he was on WIP. He's like, I'd much rather do joint practices. These preseason games do nothing. Like joint practices, you get to go up against somebody else who doesn't know your moveset. You keep going up against a Jason Peters and a Lane Johnson. They learn your moveset. So if you want to go and try a spin move or try a bull rush or try an up and under, they know it's coming because they've seen you every day throughout camp. So I definitely agree with you there. And hopefully the NFL does something and change it because we need to get rid of preseason. I would love for tonight to be week 1 of the NFL, watching Green Bay and Chicago as it leads us into an 18-game schedule. I would be all for that. Hopefully it happens soon. We'll find out. Before we finish things off, this segment was brought to you by HG Coal-Fired Pizza with local stores in Warrington and Chesterbrook, PA. Stop in for the finest coal-fired pizza in town. Visit the website at www.hgcoalfiredpizza.com or give them a call at 215-343-4550. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at ANY Podcast. My Twitter handle is at LJHarrell54 and Connor's at Connor10. That's Connor TEN. And wherever you're listening to us, rate and review the podcast. If you have any suggestions for us going into the regular season of the NFL, let us know. We will be sure we love any and all, constructive criticism, anything that we can improve upon. We want to make this the best show for you guys to listen to as we head into this Eagles season, which we are expecting big things from the Philadelphia Eagles. We will be back next week as we get ready for week 1 of the 2019 NFL season as the Philadelphia Eagles will host the Washington Redskins. We'll get you all you need to, we'll help you out and get all you need to know for and about the Washington Redskins. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for listening to the Kelly Green Hour here on the Always Next Year podcast. And here are the Jackdaws sending us out.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through. Jiggle my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb.